In this week's video, I'm going to take you through a lactate test, my first crit race in over 4 months, and my very first road race in 12 months. This video is going to go through how you can turn things around in just 1 week by just changing the way you approach a race and changing how you think about a race. In the first crit race, you'll see how I struggled going into it, kind of underestimating my expectations and it not going the way I wanted to. And I'll take you through my week's training until the following week where I do a road race, and you see how that goes just by going in, making a decision on what you're going to do before the race starts and following through on that plan and how that leads to a better outcome. So in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through a lactate test. I've not done one of these for about 6-7 weeks now. Been doing some big LT1 blocks. Hopefully this should be a good improvement and we'll see where I'm at. I've been off antibiotics for 2 weeks now. My immunoglobulin replacement therapy has been going well. Not been ill, managed to stay healthy. So hopefully I won't be suffering any of the side effects of the antibiotics now that I've cleared them from my system. So let's get into the lactate test now. So just going into my lactate test now, using my usual protocol of 6-minute efforts with 2 minutes of easy, just so I can do the prick myself to get the sample size. So starting off 200 watts, 220, 240, 260, and you can just see the lactate coming up on the screen of the monitor there. Just 1.7 millimole, 300 watts, 2.8, 320, and 4.4. So that's the end of the test. Okay, so that was the lactate test. I've interpreted the results and I'd probably say I was somewhere around 270 to 300 watts. So 270 LT1, 300 watts LT2. It's now the next day. It's Scottish Crit Champs today. I'm riding over to the course as we speak. I can't put any footage in from the race itself because my on-bike mount has broken and you're not allowed to use body-mounted cameras for racing. So I'm going to take you along for the warm-up and I'll overlay some power if I can do that in post. But going to be 6 minutes LT1, 3 minutes LT2, and then some VO2 max efforts and a sprint as we get closer to the circuit. So let's go into that, and once that warm-up's done, I'll report about how the race finished, unless I have any footage. That's the warm-up done, just to ride to the circuit now. A few small preparation things like putting numbers on, filling up a bottle or something, but yeah, legs feel a bit interesting. I've been doing a lot of aerobic work before this. I've not had nearly as much preparation time as I'd like. I definitely know there's some people here who are looking to get a good result. I'm mainly looking to keep my Cat 2 license so I don't need to regain that early next year, so we're just trying to score some points today, which might be a big ask, but we'll see. You don't know if you don't try. So go for the race and I'll feedback afterwards. I'll give you maybe a rundown of the bike when I get to the circuit, just some stuff I'm using, and yeah, I'll give a rundown after the race is done. Just the usual road bike setup, GP 5000 tyres, and I've switched to a 105 chainring as my Ultegra one wore out, but here is the puncture, the famous puncture. Well, it's the next day. Yesterday definitely didn't go to plan. About 15 minutes in, the tubeless plug that I've had in my front tyre for probably a year and a half now blew. The sealant did its job. It slowly but surely sealed the puncture, but I made the call that I wasn't going to score any points, which was the main point of doing that crit. After only 2 weeks of antibiotics, I wasn't expecting too much, but it would have been nice to score some points towards keeping my Cat 2 license for next year. Made the call that if the puncture was to blow, then I'd probably end up on the deck and it'd only send me back further. Even with immunoglobulin, you don't want to take any risk with skin infections, so it probably wasn't worth the risk, so I pulled out of the race, and about 5 minutes after that, the puncture blew in the back of the car. The tyre completely deflated. So I'm racing this Saturday up north. It's a road race, probably suit me a bit better, but it's Monday morning. I'm going to do some LT1 training today, and I'm going to take you along for that 4 by 15 minutes, hopefully. First session at the new thresholds, so we'll be riding mainly on feel and being conservative with what power I'm pushing, but I'll be up a 15-minute climb, so it should be quite a good session. So I'll get into that now. That's currently reached the bottom of the climb, so I'm going to do a 6-minute warm-up to get to the north side, and then when I'm on the north side, that's the longer, more consistent gradient side, and I'll do 4 by 15 minutes, and I'll just be monitoring the power based on the core body temperature and my heart rate, as well as a little bit of feeling in the legs. If it feels like it's too hard and yesterday's taking something out of me, or a little bit of dehydration, or poor night's sleep, whatever it could be, then I'll ease the power off. But it's the first session of these new thresholds, so I'm monitoring a lot of different things just to see if the intensity is right or if I need to drop the power. But definitely will not be increasing the power today. So that's the warm-up done. Nice and easy, just 6 minutes. I feel like that's going to be a theme for this week, which is always do the warm-up. You can feel really rubbish in the morning, especially after a race, especially when it didn't go to plan. It wasn't the result I wanted, and I went into the race with a lot of self-doubt. You know, I'd only been training for 2 weeks without taking antibiotics daily, and I went into the race just thinking, I'm going to get my head kicked in here. But if you go through the motions, you do the warm-up, you prepare properly, you can often end up surprising yourself. And there's been so many times I've gone out, I've maybe had a bad night's sleep, I've maybe not been as hydrated as I like, but you go through the warm-up, 30 minutes in, all of a sudden you feel good. And there'd be so many sessions you would have missed if you simply never did the warm-up and never went through those motions to see how you actually are and not just how you feel first thing in the morning. And I just think that absolutely summarizes this week. Don't predict how you're going to feel. Go through the motions and see how you feel. Running 100 grams of carbs an hour for this session. Should be quite a big kilojoule session. Usually I'm going to guess 850 calories, 900 calories an hour. So I want to be consuming about 40% of the calories burned in fuel, and sugar is not the highest of calories. So definitely want to run upper limits of carbohydrates, and that's just going to mean that every effort can be complete to the best of its ability. And I'm not trying to catch up too much when I get home in terms of carb intake. So next time I speak, it'll be after the first or second effort up Dunning-Glen, and I'll try and get some footage of me riding up there as well. Another 100 grams before the end of the session, and then we'll just be riding home. So have that now, do the final effort, and ride home. So we're just coming to the end of my fourth and final effort, and I just thought I'd mention the sort of sensations that you get during these sessions. Heart rate drift, you don't really want to be looking at more than 5 beats. I've been riding between sort of 150 and 155. As I started talking, it's gone a bit higher, but that's okay, I've only got 2 minutes to go. So the other thing being, you don't want to be able to talk in long sentences, and you also don't want to be only able to say one word. You know, you should be able to breathe. Your breathing should be under control. This is aerobic training after all. Clues in the name. That's the view we've got here in Scotland. And the other thing is, you know, this is supposed to be done below 2 millimole lactate, preferably even lower. So we don't want stinging in the legs. This should not feel heavy. It should feel like you can spin 90 RPM ideally. So if you've ever got LT1 training, that's the kind of sensations you should have in the legs. And as you progress through the weeks and the duration of the efforts increases, those sensations should only improve. It should become easier and easier and easier as you progress through 10, 15, 20, 40 minute efforts. Past me done at the top of the climb. So I'll put up on screen the stats for today's ride. I'll get home and I'll see you at my next interval session before the race on Saturday. So we're back with another interval session. Today we've got some harder stuff, 40-20s and then 3 by 8 minutes at threshold. So really focusing on the aerobic work at the moment. It's what I've been missing for the past few months. And I'm racing this weekend. It's going to be hilly. It's not going to be a crit circuit, so really trying to develop that. I've got a stage race in a month's time, so I've definitely got more time to prepare for that race. My training's going to switch from sort of sprints and standing starts that I was doing in preparation of the crit I did at the weekend, which didn't amount to anything, but those hard efforts are still going to be in the system and helping me with these 40-20s and VO2 max efforts, so I don't regret it. So it's going to be going into a slightly harder warm-up today. 6 minutes LT1, 3 minutes LT2, and then a couple 40-20s before going into the main set of 40-20s, which will be hopefully 12 efforts, 3 sets of 12 efforts, and then 3 by 8 minutes. So I'll get some footage of the warm-up, and then we'll get into it, and I'll give any thoughts that I have along the way. So that's us ready for the working set, and there's something that I've definitely learned from doing these efforts over the years, and it's that although it's tempting and you feel like you can, it's not always the best idea to go flat out in 40-20s. There's definitely a time and place for it, where you want to be pushing the absolute highest power you can for the efforts you have, but in a build phase or coming back from illness, coming back from injury, I feel like it's always so much better to pin it at 130% of your FTP or threshold or whatever metric you're using to determine that. Just by limiting yourself to 130%, you're going to be so much more controlled. You're not going to fail sessions quite as frequently, and you're still going to get almost all of the adaptation with none of the stress that comes from sprinting into the efforts. Just something I've thought over the years. I definitely used to be the guy who'd do 480 watts for 40-20s, 140, 150% of FTP. And then 3 weeks in, I wouldn't be able to do the session anymore. And I was missing out on building the duration and the volume at VO2 max that you get by pinning it at 130% intensity. So give that a try, let me know what you think. Oh man, if I was to say how I felt at the first interval in a 40-20 session, I'd always say, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this. But somehow, as long as you pin the power at the right intensity, you always seem to finish the session and get it done. But that first one's always horrible. That's 1 set down, 2 to go. 2 of 3. It doesn't get much easier, to be honest. Core body temperature's increasing, but luckily or unluckily, I had a wasp in my helmet the whole way up, which acted like the chasing dog and kept me motivated to keep moving rather than slow down and be stung. So 1 more to go. Well, that's 3 of 3 done. Had to unzip the jersey. Body was getting way too hot. But well executed session, good power. Happy with that. Going to stop at the shop, get some balls, and then get into the threshold stuff. I will say, after doing those 40-20s, threshold feels relatively leisurely compared to it. But that's good. 2 more to go. And that'll be today's session, the biggest session of the week done. Third and final effort of 8 minutes, 300 watts. That's just sort of the intensity, so because I'm so far below my VT2, I can still speak in almost full sentences, but heart rate's a lot higher. I'm feeling it in my legs a lot more, so yep, 30 more seconds, lap it, and then get to enjoy the rest of this lovely day in Scotland and the ride home. Doesn't get much better than this when you nail a big interval session on a hot summer's day. Let's get into it. So it's the day before the Joy Bar road race. We'll be heading up to Alford tomorrow morning. Be an early start, but the race is at 1 o'clock, so up and down in a day. It's about three and a half hours to get up there. Should be a 92k road race, so about 2.5 hours of racing. 3.5 hour road race would maybe be a bit too much this early in, but it's the day before. We're going to be doing some openers, some basic stuff, basically the warm up for an intense training session. So 6 minutes LT1, 3 minutes LT2, but instead of going into some 40-20s, I'm going to do some sort of 5-second to 10-second sprint / rev outs. Should be a good day tomorrow. Hopefully looking to make up for the poor result last weekend. It's definitely a course and race that should suit me a bit better than a crit, and got the brand new tyre on the bike, so hopefully no front or rear punctures tomorrow. So I'll catch up with you before the road race tomorrow and any sort of thoughts afterwards, and we'll see how the race goes. Well, it wasn't too early a start this morning. Managed to make it up here to Alford on good time. It wasn't 3.5 hours, it was only 2, maybe a little bit under. Stopped at McDonald's, got a double espresso, so feeling perfectly caffeinated, ready for this race. And I've got a big box of rice and jam. So it's about 2.5, 3 hours to the race start. So this will be my last meal. Until then, I'll be maybe having some wine gums to get ready, and then I'll have a couple of caffeine gels right before the start. And I've got 120 grams an hour of carbs in the flask for the 2 hours, 2.5 hours race duration. Should be a good day. Course suits me a lot more than the crit last weekend, and I'm going to look to make the race as hard as possible to try and hopefully draw out the effort and suit myself a little bit more. Did some good sprint power yesterday in training, just as part of the warm-up sort of openers, but ideally the race is hard for a little bit longer, so I'm going to go in the first move of the day. That's my main objective for today, is by all means necessary getting that first move, and then hopefully, because I don't have anybody in the feed zone, I'm going to make a move on the climb that's on the feed zone and try and get a gap towards the end of the race, ride it into the finish, and hopefully pull it off. But we'll have to see. That's the plan. It's now just time to execute it. So I'll go through the warm-up. I might put a clip in of the warm-up I'll do on the road. It'll be very similar to yesterday, and I'll catch up after the race. Well, this is the reality of racing in the UK. Sitting in your mum's car, eating a massive Tupperware of rice and jam while in the car park of a school community campus. It's not glamorous. So that's me on the neutral section of the course. I've just come out, 10 minutes easy, just spinning the legs, see how the legs feel, see how the heart rate is. The heart rate's nice and high, so I've successfully freshened up from the training I've been doing. I just had a caffeine gel. It's 50 minutes to the race start, so that's good timing to get the caffeine in the system ready for the start, as I'm wanting to hit it hard from the beginning. So I'm just going to go into a bit of a harder warm-up now, because it's been 2 hours in the car, and when I feel this fresh, I really feel like I need to warm up. I haven't been doing too hard training for 2 days now, so hard warm-up to really open up the lungs and get the heart going, and we should be ready for a hard start and hopefully catch people off guard and get off the front nice and early. So I'll go into that, and this will be the last thing I say before I'm lining up. Well, the dust has settled on yesterday's race. It was a shock to the system, racing for the first time in 12 months. Well, I should say road race for the first time in 12 months. I've done 3 crits this year, 2 DNFs and 1 finish in 7th place, which had to absolutely haul my body around because I was still on antibiotics. To get this race result after only 3 weeks off antibiotics feels like a real breakthrough. I'm still a long way away from where I was last year and where I want to be, but it feels like I'm moving in the right direction for the first time in probably a year. So it feels good to have all the tools available to me. Thanks to plasma donors, I've now got the medicine I need to stay healthy and actually be able to train, as opposed to antibiotics which were keeping me relatively healthy, but absolutely ruined my training and just how I felt day to day. So yeah, it was a really positive weekend. I went in with a much more positive mindset. I executed exactly as I said I was going to do. I said in the pre-race that by all means necessary I was going to get in that first move, and it meant I went from the flag drop, and there was 3 of us. Unfortunately, the third guy, his rear mech snapped on the first climb of the day, so it came down to 2 of us. We tried to stay as positive as possible, even though it was going to be a big task to stay away that early in the race. Kept pushing hard, did some power numbers that I didn't think I'd be able to do, to be honest, from the testing I'd done the week before. If I was to believe those numbers in the test, I don't believe I would have been able to push that hard for that long in the race. But I found something in me. Maybe it was the amount of caffeine I had before the race. I had 3 double espressos and 2 caffeine gels. I was able to push harder than I thought I'd be able to do. The bunch came back together. We got brought back about 15 minutes in and took 10-15 minutes to recover. Rolled through a few times and looked down at my Garmin, saw an hour and a half, and just like the advice I give to other people, you know, if an hour and a half there's a break that goes, it's probably the one to be in. So got in that move, and that ended up being the winning move. Came to the final climb, absolutely on my knees. I think everybody in the group was on their knees, to be honest. Rode up the final climb. It looked like we might get brought back. The gap, we had well over a minute, and the gap started coming down to about 30-35 seconds. Got to the final climb, hung in there, and I'd done good sprint training. I'd done good sprint power in the training session the day before the race, so I backed my sprint, and unfortunately it wasn't the strongest guy on the day, so got rolled and came in second. But there's a short clip of me coming in second, not too many photos available just yet. I'll put in the video, but this week has more been about the mindset and how you can go from one weekend where you just don't back yourself, you think you're going to get your head kicked in, and you can almost think bad things into reality. You know, that tubeless plug blowing in 15 minutes into the race was almost thought into reality. You know, you went in with a negative mindset. You thought that it was going to be too hard for you because you hadn't done the training, and a week later you go to a road race which was undeniably a harder race, and just with a positive mindset, with the right attitude of you're going to make the race as hard as you can, yeah, you get the result you wanted and the result you needed to keep your Cat 2 license. So yeah, onwards from here. I'm going to be documenting the training that it takes to do a stage race in 4 weeks time. Going to be some big training blocks required to really build that aerobic engine that I'm lacking so severely. I really struggled towards the end of the race the other day, and that was only 2 hours 20. So any longer road races, I'm going to need a lot more engine, and that's what I'll be working towards over the next 4 weeks. So stay tuned for that, and you'll see the kind of training I'm doing. But thanks for watching. I hope you found something in this useful, documenting a week in my life, the training I'm doing, and most importantly, having a positive mindset towards the racing you're doing. There's no point showing up if you're going to show up negative and race negatively. So stay tuned for more content like this coming along soon.